What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Sports Card Madness. Today's episode is just me and LZ. LZ, what are we covering today?
Oh, today we're actually getting into something that we promised a couple episodes ago, Nick. We are getting into buying on eBay and not just sports cards. For all of our listeners, this is literally how you buy everything on eBay. If you are buying a quilt or a trombone or some very nice sports cards, you are going to follow all of these tips that we bring up today.
Right on, right
Yeah.
on, man.
Mm-hmm.
I, and that covers probably most of America. I think everybody's bought something on eBay, so this
Yeah.
should be good. Cool.
Yeah.
Hey, before we dive in, I got to update you on something.
Okay.
So I finally, we talked about the Michael Jordan rookie, the
Mm-hmm.
signed Michael Jordan rookie. I was going out to Chicago, got postponed by a hurricane, but I actually made it happen, man. I I actually went out there a few weeks ago,
That's awesome.
and I
Okay.
wanted to tell you how it went down before we dive into eBay.
Yeah, please share because I think a past episode we did say we'd let people know. So
Sure,
fill
yeah,
us fill us all in, Nick.
cool. So, right, I flew out there. This was wild, man. So I've got a big wad of cash in my backpack. Feels like a drug deal. I got cash and like two card holders.
So
Chum,
I'm going to ask you some questions as we go through this.
sure.
So you're going through security with a wad of cash. Were you worried
Yeah,
about doing that?
yeah, that was fun. I actually looked it up too. I'm like, how much cash allowed on a domestic flight? And I found out domestic is unlimited, so all good.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, so for the audience, if you ever need to travel with a wad of cash, you're good in the
That's it.
US. So yeah, I went out there, man. Was at the restaurant. We met at a barbecue joint, right? Because it's the Midwest. And I walk in with this backpack of cash, and the guy's there, and so is his wife.
Okay.
And I'm like,
All right.
oh man, okay, it's a family affair.
Yeah.
So I sit down and we talk, and it's just like, am I really gonna hand him like a wad of cash for this card? And his wife is there just chilling, enjoying the whole
Yeah.
thing.
What is his wife doing at the time? Is she like on her phone? Is she like sipping a Mai Tai? What is she doing while this is all going down?
She's interested, and she didn't say it, but I got the sense of like, all right, finally, this is worth it, what you were doing, like that type of vibe.
Oh, finally, we can install that jacuzzi that I've been asking for the past 20 years.
Oh man, yeah, and it gets better, dude. So I don't know. I live in New England. It's a little bit different than the Midwest, but we're out there, and this is a barbecue place. I got ribs for lunch.
So it's like
There's
smoky in the restaurant and everything.
exactly like
Okay.
it's legit.
Yeah.
It's a great spot.
Nice.
I look over. There's like a bridal shower. Like they're dressed all nice. The way I think of a bridal shower is like mimosas, and like they're doing their thing at some, I don't know, some Italian restaurant. Like
Mm-mm.
this was like, it was like a hoedown, and it was like legit. I was impressed. I was very
Ribs,
impressed. Yeah.
brisket, mac and
Yeah.
cheese,
Just with their hands. Like, I don't know. It was awesome. So
collard greens.
it was a good time. Swapped the cards, got back on the plane, got out of Dodge, and it was a fun day trip to Chicago. Now I'm torn between two cards, which one to keep. Still thinking about that, but it's a good problem to have. So I'm
So
psyched.
yeah, you talked about just the interaction with the wife. How was it? You've been going back and forth with this guy, but you've never met in person. And now you're kind of doing this long distance trade. I mean, you forked over some money to get on a plane and go visit him. How was the interaction when you first met? Was it awkward? Was it cordial right at the beginning? Like how was it?
Yeah, he was a nice guy. He was ready
Yeah,
to kind of. I think he was excited for me, because he knows I
good.
needed the card for my set. He was. I think he was also like a burden was lifted. Like he did not want to deal with the grading fees and taking the
Mhm.
gamble that I was going to take. So it was nice, and he's thinking of liquidating his other '80s signed MJ cards, and I'll be there if it happens for sure. And it worked out well. I submitted to Beckett. I watched like a hawk for 5 days. It took him 6 days, and it passed,
Six
which
days.
was
That's not bad.
which was awesome.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
It
thanks. So
passed.
we're good. I got two MJs, two signed MJs now. Got to figure out which one to keep. Um, and I might cross it to PSA or whatever. But I figured the audience would want to know what happened. And it was kind of a cool story. Not every day you take a day trip to Chicago and buy a card that could end up being worth a lot of money like that. So it was pretty awesome. I'll remember it
That
forever.
yeah, that's a great story. And when you were talking about meeting that guy, you know what it made me think of too? We talk about this like almost every pod, but it's certainly about building your PC and getting cards, and some people flip cards and that whole experience, but it's the overall experience. It's the interaction of meeting people. And when you said that he almost felt like maybe there was like a burden lifted, or like he wanted to do this for you because it was like part of your set and he understood how important it was. I think that's like a profound statement that I believe is probably true, Nick. And I would equate it to um I've had the opportunity over the years to actually purchase a few different homes, and each time that we purchased a home, my wife has written like a really nice like handwritten note to the sellers and like talk to them about how we could picture our kids living in this house and making memories and everything. And I think in both cases the sellers like probably had higher offers, but they chose us because of that, because they understood how much it meant to us. So I think with you, he understood how
Yeah.
much it meant to you, because this set is very, very important to you. So
Yeah,
that's awesome.
he said something that stuck with me too. He goes, I've probably looked at this thing like 8 times since I got it signed. And once the real kicker was when he realized his son did not want it. He said his son had no interest in it. That was it. He's like, all right, we're done. Like, I'm going to
That's
sell
it.
it then.
Mm-hmm.
So it's great. Cool.
Nice.
Cool,
Well,
man. All right.
congrats. Thanks for
Thank you.
sharing that one. That's a cool story.
So that was a fun detour, but back to eBay. All right.
Back to eBay. All right. So, like we did with the selling on eBay, let's try to go in a little bit of like chronological order with the process.
Sure.
The first one that I can think of is, how do you even decide if you want to buy a card or something else on eBay, right?
Right.
Some of the things that go through my mind, and then you can share some of the other things too, right? For me personally, I always try. Well, actually, yeah, no, I do. I always try to start by looking for other avenues instead of eBay. Like, I will look on the Facebook forums in the groups I belong to. Is anybody selling what I'm looking for? Instagram, is anybody selling what I'm looking for? Maybe I'll go to a couple local card shows again. Can I find what I'm looking for? If I can't, and there's a reason why I do that. The reason why I do that is certainly at a card show, you can get it a lot quicker. It's cash and you just hand them cash and you get your card and you're on your way. With the Facebook and the Instagram, there's different fees that you can avoid. We'll probably get to the fees at some point in this talk, but you kind of avoid all that. But once I decide that, shoot, kind of, I can't find it anywhere, that's when I turn to eBay. eBay's got a huge inventory that make it very easy to search. So that is typically, right, it's almost, I don't want to say it's the last resort, because it is a good resort to take, but it typically is probably like the fourth option that I go to. Then there's the auction houses. I probably go to eBay unless it's a very, very high end value card. I'll go to eBay before I check an auction house. But at least that's kind of probably my checklist on deciding. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's smart. Like, the thing about eBay is they've got a lot of stuff, they got a lot of users. So you're typically going to find something on there. And often you can actually, it's interesting how it approaches sometimes. If I need something like, let's use an example, a 1986 Fleer card, right? I'll actually look for somebody who has something similar, but they don't have the other item listed. And I'll message them and be like, what else you got? And that's how I've made a lot of relationships in the hobby. And then, we'll transact on that deal through eBay, and then we can go off eBay for future stuff that he hasn't listed yet, which is totally legit. So I think that's a process there. You can just go on eBay and look around and start contacting people. But yeah, like, I mean, it's funny. People don't think of Craigslist very much, but you'd be surprised. I know somebody who does well on there. Our friend out in California, he goes on Craigslist. He's found a couple Jordan rookies on there that were legit. just people cleaning stuff out. They don't know about social media groups and things like that. They know Craigslist exists because it's a pretty old site. It's pretty easy to use. It's free. There's no fees. Um, and they put it up there. So you could search there too. I mean, there's a lot. You can get creative. You can find things in a
Mm,
lot of places.
mm. I love the idea that you just brought up of if asking somebody if they have similar items, like if they're selling a whatever, a 86 flare, or I don't know, prism card, whatever it is, but they have a bunch of Mahomes cards and you're looking for one in particular. That's great. I didn't even, yeah, I just learned something. I actually don't do that, but I'm going to start doing that one. That's great. All right. So now you've decided you're going to go with eBay. And you're going to look up a Ronald Acuna rookie card, Bowman rookie card. That's the one you want. And like, where do you start then? So you got to definitely do some research first, right? Um, First research I do is the first thing is always price, right? I'm okay. I got to look at prices. What is this thing going to cost me? Um, Talked about it before. Go to the sold section, right? Filter by sold and completed. See what these things are going for just to get an idea. So that's number one. The other thing we talk about a lot too is the 130 point app. Definitely go there, type the card in, see what some other solds are going, some other sales are going for. So that is one thing. Next thing I have is inspecting the product. You have to inspect your product. And this, Nick, you could probably definitely chime in. Like, don't be afraid to interrupt. So
Yeah.
with inspecting the product, I actually like using my phone because I just find it to be easier to like zoom in on my phone with a picture. You can do it on the laptops, but especially if you don't have a touchscreen, like your mouse, sometimes it zooms too much or too far, or not enough. So I like the phone because you get that kind of point pinch zoom feature. And I will look at the cards. I will I think as you get better and better at understanding the card that you want, you can quickly eyeball, I believe, especially if it's one that has like decent borders, like a card that has good borders, you can kind of eyeball if something's going to be like an 8, a 9, and a 10. You just can by like centering. All right. So you can start by doing that quickly. Like, how's the centering look? Start zooming in, look at the corners. I want you to talk about some counterfeits a bit, but
Yep.
yeah, I'm sure your head's going there. But yeah, that you definitely have to inspect. And then lastly for me is reviews. Now, a lot of reviews can be, untruthful, but I think the crowdsourcing does work. Like if you see like 2,500 5-star reviews, chances are that seller is a solid seller. So those are the three things that I always look for. There's a lot of time. I don't want to say a lot of time, but let's call it a half an hour I spend on looking at prices. Then once I get the prices, I start looking at the cards, start zooming in, start like checking off or liking the ones that I think are in my short list, start looking at reviews. And now I'm getting pretty close to wanting to buy the thing. Go ahead. What else do you have? Especially counterfeits, if you want to talk about that one too.
Yeah, the first thing you mentioned, just using your Acuna example,
Mm,
especially with modern cards. With vintage, it's very easy because there's just one card. There's no parallels.
right.
With that Ronald Acuna card, I imagine there's a number of variations. So if you're comparing prices, you want to make sure you're comparing apples to apples, and it's the exact variation that you're referencing. Like you're not buying like some different one or whatever. That's always tricky for me. I have to look up because it's like the zebra stripes or like the refractor and stuff like that. Counterfeit is interesting. Before you even get into that, if you're buying a card on eBay that is slabbed, like it's in a PSA slab, but does not have a card grade, you must be extra careful. I have been burned on this. I bought a card on eBay that looked like it could be a 6. It was beautiful. I got it and it was very clearly photoshopped and there was no card grades. They could get away with it. If PSA had graded that card and it was like a 3, you can't really dance around it too much with Photoshop. But if it's just like an auto grade, you can get burned pretty bad. So you want to like, especially if it's a new label, go in the database, look up the picture. Does it match? If it's an old label, you're gambling a little bit.
Mm,
So you got to be
yep.
careful with that. And then for counterfeits, they're everywhere. Don't think because you're buying something on eBay and it's a big company that you're not going to get counterfeits. It's just like buying something on Amazon. If you buy from the wrong seller on Amazon, you're going to get something counterfeit or something not as good or the wrong price. Same rules apply for eBay. They're not policing it like you think they're policing it. Um, the good news is you can typically get your money back through your credit card or through eBay's protection program, but just do your research. Find somebody like me who knows 86 Fleer or Jordan or something like that, or whatever you're looking at. And if you can't find somebody, just Google and just see if there's some examples or somebody's done an article about it or something like that. When all else fails, if it's a good price and the reviews are good, buy the card and just know that, do it with a credit card and know that you're protected if it is counterfeit.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Do you have any tips for on the kind of, let's call it reviewers, like you're looking at reviewers? Is there anything that you pay attention to when you're looking at reviews of actual sellers themselves?
Yeah, they play a little game. So again, I've spent a career in digital marketing, so I know all about click farms. If
Mm,
you don't know what that is, you can Google it. But basically, it's somewhere, typically overseas, where a lot of people are working and they are doing tasks, small tasks for a company at scale. So in this example, you could have a company that's buying very cheap cards, $1 or $2, and then they're basically paying her $1 or $2 for a review. They'll have somebody else with an account do the review. You do a couple thousand of those, all of a sudden you're a super seller and you look great on eBay, right? So the way that you can
yeah.
sniff that out is you actually look at the reviews. And if the English is bad, that might be the case. If it's really poor, like consistently, look at the types of cards they're selling. Are they just selling like a ton of dollar cards and getting reviews on them, or are they selling $20,000 cards? Have they got like a nice mix of products that they're selling? And again, this goes beyond cards, right? Like sneakers, I'm sure a ton of counterfeits. So there's ways you can do it. To look at the so eBay defaults to the positive reviews every
Of
time.
course. Yeah.
Go straight to the negative, baby. Look at those
Mhm.
negative reviews. That's going to tell you everything. If I had done that with the seller that I got burned on the Photoshop, there were 15 negative reviews that said this thing's creased. It didn't look creased in the picture. I would never have bought from him. So
Oh,
that was on
geez.
me to not look at that,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And eventually it got made right. But those are, I mean, it's not perfect, but those are some things you can do.
Okay. All right. Nice. Excellent. All right. So we've now inspected the card. We understand what we want to pay for it. We kind of have a few sellers that maybe we're interested in doing business with them. Now let's get to auctions. What are you looking for with auctions, Nick?
Auctions are fun. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
because at the end of the auction, you have created the latest and greatest comp. Like you own the new price of that card. And that's kind of cool. It's
Mhm.
also a little gnarly because you don't know how much you should pay because you're in an auction. I would say go into an auction as if you're spending somebody else's money. You'll probably care a little bit more and you'll detach from it a little bit. It's like when you buy your first home, your wife's on you because she's already thinking of Christmas by the fireplace and you're like, oh, I gotta get this house. I gotta get this house. Don't go on eBay. Don't go into eBay auctions with that mentality, man. It's just an awful idea. I gotta
Yeah.
get this card. I gotta get this card because if it's a rare card, there could be two people and you're just kicking the crap out of each other. Just go into it rationally with a top price in mind, just like you would any negotiation. And if it goes beyond that price, just don't pay it. There's other fish in
No,
the
you got to
sea.
walk away.
It's
Yeah.
hard to do that. It's
Mhm.
because it's a passionate thing. You're collecting. Um, Sometimes you got to walk away. You'll never know. Like something could show up a week later. It's a little bit different, a little bit cheaper, different grade. don't kill yourself going after an auction. So that's one tip.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I think that's a great tip. For me, I mean, I think, yeah, I'm always interested when I start looking at auctions, um, how many bids there are, right? Especially if I don't get in right away and I'm not the first bid. So that's an important thing, is just to understand, okay, oh shoot, there's 200 bids already and we have 7 days left. Okay, this is going to be that when this thing gets down to the wire, there's going to be at least 10 people who are going to be very emotionally invested. And I might want to be one of them, right? Or I might say, you know what? No, I can tell this thing's going to get out of hand. Um, so I think that's an important thing just to watch for, right? Not to scare you away either direction, but look for that as well, I think. Yeah.
Right, right. Things can get gnarly with that many. There is another strategy. This works better at auction houses than eBay.
Hmm.
Sometimes, if let's say you want to spend $30,000 on something, you can immediately bid that up to like 20,000 and just knock out all the would-be players. And then they're not, that reduces the amount of bidders at an auction site. And when you go into overtime, like at Golden, there's less competition. So you
Yeah.
just kind of
And
scare people away.
that comes down to your research, right? You
Right.
can pull that off. If you do your research and you know that card is worth 30 grand and this thing's sitting at, let's say, $1,200 right now, but 200 people have bid, you know that you're not going to be able to just wait this thing out and get it for $2,000.
No
You're
way.
paying 30 grand for that thing. So to Nick's point, go ahead and wipe out all those people by bidding
Straight up.
$20,000. Just do it. Just do it. Um, another just small tip for me, especially when I find like an auction that I'm like, oh, okay, this is one that I want to get into, but I don't want to bid yet. I will always make at least one bid, even if it's a small one, especially with eBay, because what's happened to me before is like, oh, okay, I'm gonna remind myself in 5 days to come back and bid on this thing. I would say maybe 20% of the time I remember, right? I put all sorts of reminders on my phone and stuff. And there's even notifications that eBay will do for you. But if you make a bid, you will get like a bunch of reminders from eBay. Like, hey, there's only an hour left on this auction. You might want to put in your final bid. So that's just a small thing, right? You don't have to go all in, but just put something up there. So you're kind of now in the queue. And you remember that. This one is a little, I don't know, it's a little controversial, but at the same time, I feel like everybody does it. It's called sniping, right? With the auction. It is, you know what? I'm not going to jump in with these other 20 people for the next 5 days and constantly bid back and forth every night when I get home from work. I'm going to wait until if you have good Wi-Fi, you can wait till there is probably 7 seconds left or even less. I've done it in like 5 seconds. You wait till there's 5 seconds left and then you throw out your max bid, whatever you're willing to pay. It definitely makes some people angry doing that, but I feel like it's part of the game. Like a lot of people do it. And if you want to win your bid, sometimes you need to be sniping. So I will confess, there have definitely been times where I have absolutely done that because it's the only way you can win some of these bids. What are your thoughts on sniping, Nick?
Oh, I hate sniping, man.
I
I hate
know.
it.
I know.
I've lost so much crap to snipers. I've bid at 5 seconds. Somehow they get in at 2 seconds, and then
Oh.
your bid's just not high enough. It sucks.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I give it right back to him. Sometimes I snipe myself, and it's like revenge
You
of the
have
sniper.
to. Yeah. Yeah. Revenge of the sniper.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
you
mean,
have to
it's
do
just
it.
part of the game. Again,
Mm-hmm.
that goes to like auction times, right? We talked about that in the previous episode. Um, there's less chance of a sniper if it sends later. Like I'm not going to stay up and snipe, I'll put like a cap on things and call it a day. So it all depends on the auction and what it looks like,
Yeah.
who's involved, but
Yeah.
it's part
Time
of
of
the
day
game,
it's
man.
ending too, right? Yeah, it is. It's
So
just, it's part of the game.
you can't snipe at an auction house, which is interesting.
Mm,
So golden, there's no sniping. Whatever happens at the end of the auction, say it ends at 10 p.m. and it's at $20,000.
hmm.
Everybody who's bid up to that point has a chance, as long as you have made one bid at some point. And it goes until the end of time, every half hour. So you bid, boom, new half hour clock, boom, boom, boom. And they're using time as the cap instead of it's very interesting. So
Mm.
it could go
That's
it could go
almost
a
like
while.
if anyone's done fantasy sports and you do an auction league, it's the same way.
Yeah,
Usually in an auction league drafts in fantasy, those things can take 5-6 hours
right.
because as soon as someone bids, everyone else has a chance for another 30 seconds. And but this one's, a half an hour with golden. So
Sure.
yeah, that's how that works. Yeah. So I'm sorry, everybody, but sniping is part of the game. I don't like to do it and I don't do it very often, but sometimes it has to happen. um, all right, auctions. Is there anything else we want to talk about with auctions, Nick?
I think we've covered everything.
Okay.
That's a pretty good lay of the land. There's
Mm-hmm.
there's eBay, but there's other auction sites. So I just say be aware that eBay isn't everything. There
Mm-hmm.
are other auctions, and there are several of them.
Yep. Um, there are kind of two other main ways to buy. One is just called buy it now, and the other one's called make a bid. So you're not actually in an auction, but you can make an offer to somebody. And I actually tend to use these more often. I do. Especially I think it's especially when you're under time crunch, right? If you're building a set and you're getting close and you're like, I don't want to wait 7 days for this auction to be done and I possibly lose out. Sometimes I'm willing to maybe pay a premium, but in some cases, maybe it's actually you're getting a deal because these auctions can get gnarly. Um, so yeah, the buy it now is literally that. Someone puts a price up of $100 for this card. You can buy it for 100 and you can be on your way. And the make an offer, maybe they have it listed at 100, but they're also taking offers on it. So you can go in and offer $50. And maybe you did your research and you're like, well, this isn't worth 100. And okay, I understand that the seller's trying to get more than it's really worth. So sometimes I will make an offer and I will put in the notes, done my research. The last two comps were $72. And usually I'll throw them a little bit of a bone. Be like, the last two offers were $70. I'll do it now for 75. Right. So at least maybe they feel like they're winning a little bit with the recent comps. So that's usually how I'll handle those. What I know you mentioned at one point, it might have been a different episode, that some people even know like how to game the system with like making the offer. Like they know like if someone sets like a minimum, you can like figure out what that minimum is. Do you remember what I'm talking about that you
Yeah, of
referenced that
course.
at one point? Yeah.
Yeah, you can get a lot of information. You can actually see who's bidding too. eBay hides like most of the characters, but you can see the first two. So if you've got like a buddy in cards or like a buddy's friend and he's like, I'm not bidding on that thing, you can actually see. You just click on it and you can see the first two characters. You're like, I know who that is. So there's funny games like that. You can set, you can have a minimum and then also have a buy it now. And as soon as the minimum is taken, it turns into an auction. So it's tricky. They'll set different prices to see if eBay's algorithm will rank things better or not. And for the record, I mean, I know this gets into selling. If you want something to rip on eBay and get that algorithm going, throw that thing on there for $1 and step back.
Mm-hmm.
The algorithm loves that. I got two auctions right now that I just set at $1 and let them rip. So yeah, I mean, watch the minimums, do your research, make sure they're not getting cute with it. But there is, some stuff that happens around that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Um, all right. So you've now done your research. You've decided auction, buy now, make an offer. You actually touched on, I thought you were going to go there earlier, but you didn't. So I'll bring it up now. When you were talking about the research, this kind of falls under it with when you said like, especially the slabs, right? Um, eBay let's call it, I don't know, maybe it's probably been the past year because time flies, or maybe a little less. They have authentication services now. So, because I thought you were going to get into that a little bit earlier, but can you talk about that piece of it, the authentication side of it?
Yeah, so I don't love it.
Okay.
I think it's a little silly right now. Basically, in my opinion, I think it adds weeks to you receiving the card. So
Hmm.
the reason I think it's silly is they don't authenticate aftermarket signatures. So if you pull a card that's signed as part of the factory out of a pack, they'll look at that. That's fine. But if you've got like an on card autograph or something you've done in person and you send that in for authentication, eBay's like, cool, card's real. Can't say anything about the autograph. Here's another 2 weeks for shipping. Because what ends up happening is that card goes from the seller to a third party authenticator. And that third party authenticator says, yeah, we're good. And then they ship it to you. So it adds this like
Yeah,
this round trip that's
sure.
just
Probably is 2 weeks.
it's just
Yeah.
ridiculous for
Hmm.
very, very little value.
Hmm.
Now, I do think it would be helpful for certain cards and certain price ranges. That counterfeit thing you alluded to before, that might be helpful. They could look at an 86 Fleer and Jordan and make sure it's good. Um, but I've had two or three things go to their authentication. That creased card, that went to the authenticator. They're like, it's authentic. And then, yeah, it's authentically creased in half. And that wasn't in the listing. eBay's just like stamps it and they don't care. So the program has a lot of work to do before I'm
Yeah.
confident that it's actually a benefit. It
Hmm.
feels more like a service that they're trying very hard to pump right now and will probably charge for in the future.
Hmm.
And they're trying to get the track record so that they can charge for it. That's my opinion.
All right. I think it's actually time. We haven't done this in a little while. We need to get into Madness University.
All right.
And where I want to focus, Nick, is there's solicitations around like, hey, let's make a trade off of eBay, and kind of what, you can get in trouble there. It's very enticing, but let's talk about that. I think you definitely have, I think, even like a lesson learned there. So let's get into it. What should people be worried about, thinking about, maybe when they get approached with something like this?
First thing I want to say is 99 times out of 100, it is a situation where you're going to get burned. And you could get burned by getting kicked off of eBay. You could get burned by transacting with someone with no support infrastructure and guarantees behind that transaction. And it's just like bad form too. Like you're finding people on eBay, therefore, eBay should kind of be compensated. That's why I said earlier, do the deal. And then if you like the guy, then if it hasn't been listed yet, that's fair game. Stuff that's
Mm-hmm.
listed on eBay, you'll get these like, hey, let's make a trade. That card's worth less than this. Here's my Instagram. You want to contact me? It's a very slippery slope, and it's kind of a dark road that you go down. So I would just avoid it altogether. If you're feeling froggy and you want to do this, and you're getting into it, just take measures into your own hands. Like, make sure they coin the picture. That means writing
What
today's
is coin?
coin
Yeah, what
means
is it?
taking a post-it or something that doesn't look like it's photoshopped and saying like Dave, and today's date. I actually
Yep.
do a step further. I don't like that because Photoshop exists. I actually have them take a video spinning the card. And while they do that, they say the time. Say, this is Dave. It's 7:13 p.m. and this is the card. You can't fake that. He is
No.
possessing the card. Now
Mm-hmm.
it's just a matter of like, all right, am I going to get the card? Sometimes it helps. I've got friends all over the U.S. I actually start thinking like, all right, well, my buddy is like an hour from him. They could meet up. I trust my buddy. And then they can get the deal done. And then my
Mm-hmm.
buddy sends it to me. That's how I got the Pete Maravich rookie card. My buddy's out in California, met the guy. So that removes quite a bit of risk if you do that. Me personally, I got burned. I had a card up there. I went to trade it. I got burned on the trade. we did the trade, but I got a fake PSA 7 Michael Jordan. Found out from PSA that it was fake. And that was like my first experience with
That was your
86
first
Fleer.
jump. Yeah,
And
into
then the
it.
guy
Mhm.
felt bad. He traded me an 86 Fleer full raw set for it. And then I took that set, got the whole thing autographed, and made, lemons out of made lemonade out of lemons.
There you go.
But it was,
Hmm.
it's a tricky road. So I guess the message of Madness University here is be careful.
Be careful. Trust your gut. Those little hairs on the back of your neck, they don't lie. They really don't. If it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true. So watch out for that, everybody. Um, I just one other thing I wanted to cover. I mentioned it earlier, but just remember, like, you have sales tax, you have shipping costs, and you are paying for that on eBay. Right. So just keep that in mind. You win a card for $100, you're paying more than $100 for that thing because you got taxes, you got shipping costs, and it's just you just got to keep that in mind, right? So it's why I said at the beginning I kind of have my checklist where I check different forums and other ways of maybe purchasing the card. So,
Right.
yeah.
Excellent.
Hmm.
I mean, that's kind of those are the big things to look out for, right? For
I think
buying stuff
so.
on eBay.
For anything buying on eBay. I really think those are that's kind of the quick crash course for eBay.
If anyone's ever in a bind, you know how to find us.
That's
Our
right.
Instagram handles are in the pod.
Hmm.
I have no problem taking your DM and helping you with a trade that could go wrong or an item that you're not sure about. I feel these questions all the time, and I'm happy to help.
That's great, Nick.
Excellent.
Okay.
Perfect. All right. I guess that's a wrap for eBay, right, LZ?
That is a wrap.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.